everyone, my name's Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at BT13, and BT13 offers us lots of new and powerful tools to be able to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today's deck I'm going to be taking a look at is going to be a brand new iteration on a fan favorite of Alphamon. So Alphamon was a really powerful deck all the way back in BT9. It did suffer a limitation to reel the deck back into a more acceptable state, but the decrease in power really turned a lot of people off from the deck, but it was still a really strong deck focused and centered around utilizing Alphamon Ouryuken, and a lot of cards to combo with Alphamon Ouryuken, give them lots of protections, try to disrupt the opponent, while also having some good combo play and aggression all at the same time. And now that we got some really good pieces to help bring that style back in the forefront with the new Doru line from BT13, it really brings Alphamon back into the forefront with a lot of new flexibility in terms of the tech and tools that we have to try to best support our Alphamon Ouryuken. So with all that said and done, let's just dive right into the deck profile. Starting off with the Digitama, I am going to be running 5 Digitamas. You don't have to run 5 Digitamas if you don't want to. All the Digitamas are doing is trying to help us draw cards, but I am going to be prioritizing the BT7 Dorimon just because it's one of the better draw engines that we have, because its ability to draw us cards is whenever we're going to be putting cards underneath our stack, which we have lots of different ways to be able to do inside of the deck. And then as far as the 5th Digitama, I'm going to be running 1 copy of the BT13, just because it's still a really decent card at allowing us to draw cards. It's not limited to once per turn, unlike the other one, but we do have to have a sizable stack, and we do need to be attacking in order to trigger this, making it a little bit less desirable, but it's still a really good card at helping us draw cards nonetheless. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Dorumon. So this is the BT7 version of Dorumon, and its on-play ability is helping us dig out our X Antibody traded cards and our Kota Tamer. Then, on top of that, its inheritable ability for when we either shove it underneath or just already is underneath is allowing us to gain a memory whenever cards are being added to our Digimon's Digivolution source, which is part of the whole core game plan and gameplay style of what the deck is trying to do. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Ryudamon. Ryudamon is going to be very similar to Dorumon, where its on-play ability is, again, looking for our X Antibody traded cards and our Yuji, while also having the nice inheritable ability of our X Antibody Digimon having the Decoy Black ability. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Sunarizamon. So this is the promo Sunarizamon, and this card just has some really powerful synergy with what the deck is trying to do, being centered around Alphamon Ouryuken. So its native ability, while it's just sitting on the field, basically will give our high-level Digimon the piercing ability, while also its inheritable ability adding Security Tac Plus for our Digimon having 13,000 or more DP, which is going to be the vast majority of our level 6s, especially with all of the different buffs that the deck has to be playing with. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Dorugamon. So this is the BT7 version of Dorugamon, and this is a really good card for its inheritable ability to help DP boost our Digimon by them being X Antibody traded Digimon. Then on top of that, it also is going to be doubling as a good mid-stage blocker, so we could try to wall out some of the opponent's low-level stuff as long as we have another X Antibody traded card in play, or one in its Digivolution source, which we reasonably should be able to do, with the vast majority of the deck being X Antibody based cards. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Dorugamon. So this is the BT13 version of Dorugamon, and we're running this card just because it has a lower play cost than the other Dorugamon, so in case we're stuck and we need to hard play a card, this is just a better one to do, while also having that same inheritable ability that's just going to be DP boosting our Digimon, as long as it's an X Antibody traded Digimon, which all of our higher level Digimon are. And then the reason why we want a whole bunch of Dorugamons in our level 4 slots is because I'm going to be running 4 copies of DexDorugamon. So DexDorugamon is basically the Dex equivalent of X-Form Digimon, where we're using him mostly to Digivolve for free on top of our Dorugamons for some good cycling. The crazy thing about this card versus a lot of the other X-Form Digimon is the fact that with his 2 when Digivolving abilities, we not only are going to be gaining Blocker and Retaliation, which is really powerful combination of cards to try to wall the opponent out of their potential plays, but the fact that we're going to be gaining tempo and momentum for Digivolving as long as we discard a Dex-based card or an X Antibody card is going to be the big appeal to the card, so that way we could start gaining tempo and momentum to make more powerful follow-up plays with. Next, on to the ultimates, I'm going to be running 1 copy of DoruGreymon. So, DoruGreymon from BT7 was so powerful that it did need to get limited because of how much this card does for the deck, where when we Digivolve up into it, we get to place a Black X Antibody traded card from our hand to the bottom of its Digivolution source, and then it adds a lot of protections onto the Digimon, where it can't be deleted from card effects, and it can't have its DP be reduced until the end of the opponent's turn, really limiting the amount of answers that opponents would have to be able to respond to this effect. Then, on top of that, its inheritable ability adding Security Attack Plus to our X Antibody traded cards just means that our Digimon can punch a little bit harder than they normally would, and that really allows us to be able to abuse this type of a card to try to OTK the opponent with. So even though that Dorugaemon has been limited, we do have a new version of Dorugaemon, and I'm going to be running the new copy of Dorugaemon at 4, just because it's at least attempting to do something similar to what the old Dorugaemon is doing. So its when Digivolving ability is going to be checking the top 3 cards of our deck, so there is a little bit of risk and reward in terms of being able to get its ability off to add cards to its Digivolution source, but it still comes with some really solid protections where you can't have your DP be reduced until the end of the opponent's turn, so it still is attempting to have some extra protections for our Digimon, making them as safe as they can possibly be. Then its inheritable ability is really good actually at being able to help fill up our inheritables, where we get to place a Digimon with X Antibody in its traits from our hand to the bottom of its Digivolution source, allowing us to be able to use some of our parts and pieces alternatively to be able to combo off with. And then speaking of being able to combo off with, next I'm going to be running 2 copies of DexDoruGreymon as the last ultimate of the deck. So again, we do like these basically X-Form Digimon just because of that alternative Digivolution condition where we could Digivolve on top of its base for 1, and we get to discard a card to be able to gain a memory, so it actually makes it free, so that way we could try to be as tempo efficient with our cards as we possibly can, while also being able to delete one of the opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon just for Digivolving into this on top of its base. So we have some extra control inside of the deck for the opponent's low-level Digimon. Next, on to the Megas, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Ouryumon. So Ouryumon, most of the time, we're not actually trying to Digivolve into this card. We're mostly just trying to utilize its inheritable ability to shove underneath when we're comboing off with our Alphamon and our Alphamon Ouryuken, where at the end of the attack, he's going to be able to unsuspend himself as long as he's an Alphamon, but in case we're in a pinch and we do need to Digivolve into this card, he's still actually pretty decent, where we still get to add an X-traded card from our hand to the bottom of its Digivolution source, and the reward for doing that is deleting a mid to small size Digimon, while also adding extra DP and extra protection, so that way if we need to Digivolve into Alphamon Ouryuken on top of this card, we totally could. And then as far as the Alphamons go for our Mega lineup, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Alphamon from BT9. So the Alphamon from BT9 is still really good just because when we Digivolve up into him, we get to put an X Antibody traded card from our trash, which is something we don't have a whole lot of access at, underneath this Digimon to the bottom of its Digivolution source, so that way we have alternative ways to be able to utilize our cards as good inheritables. Then the reward for doing that is the fact that when a card is placed underneath him, we get to de-Digivolve one of the opponent's Digimon that could anti-tempo the opponent and really mess with their overall gameplay and strategy. But as far as the main Alphamon of the deck, I am going to be running 3 copies of the brand new BT13 Alphamon. So this Alphamon does have an on-play and when Digivolving ability to place a X Antibody traded card or Royal Knight from our trash at the bottom of this Digimon's Digivolution source, and then all of the opponent's Digimon with a play cost of 10 or higher can't attack a player, which means their security, until the end of their turn. So basically Digivolving into this card is going to turn off the opponent's ability to attack with their high stage Digimon. Then he also has a nice all turns ability, which is adding a whole lot of protection that the deck wants to be able to keep a big high level body on the field, where when this Digimon would leave the battle area, then we get to return a Digimon card with X Antibody or Royal Knights in its traits from this Digimon's Digivolution source to the bottom of our deck to prevent him from leaving play. So he's just a really good card to sit on, stop the opponent's attack, and stick on the field, so that way we have even easier access at trying to set up our Alphamon Ouryuken. And then as far as the only level 7 of the deck, that's going to be the 3 copies of Alphamon Ouryuken that we're going to be running because this card is just that powerful of a card still. So he has an alternative Digivolution condition where he actually Digivolves for 3 instead of 7 if we have a Alphamon with Ouryumon in its Digivolution source. Then the reward for Digivolving all the way up into this card is deleting all of the opponent's Digimon with the highest play cost, which is pretty standard for a level 7 to have some really decent built-in removal, but the big appeal of the card is the fact that he has an ability that triggers at the end of your turn, where you get to return up to 7 non-Digi-Egg X Antibody traded cards from his Digivolution source to the bottom of our deck, and we get to gain a memory for each card that we return, so that way we could try to use that extra memory to enhance and extend some of our plays to try to close out the game or stall out the opponent. And then when it comes to the Tamers, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Kota. So Kota is a pretty decent tamer where it's going to be the deck's dedicated memory fixing tamer, but on top of that, it's also going to be a really good consistency tool, allowing us to try to find our X Antibody traded Digimon. And then as far as the other tamers of the deck, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Yuji. So Yuji is a really powerful card for when we move our Digimon out of the raising area to be able to gain a memory and draw a card as long as it's an X Antibody traded Digimon, which is the vast majority of everything in our deck. Then on top of that, what this card is really doing is it's a combo extender as a way to use our Ouryumons in our hand and shove them underneath our Alphamons to be able to gain extra attacks, because when our black Digimon with X Antibody in its traits attacks, we get to suspend this tamer to put an X Antibody traded Digimon from our hand to the bottom of that Digimon's Digivolution source, so that allows us to trigger a whole bunch of our abilities and potentially do lots of good combo play. And then the last tamer of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Cool Boy. So Cool Boy was really good in BT9, and, well, he's still really good now, especially for Alphamon, because we could go back to utilizing the Dex cards on top of the fact that everything in the deck, or virtually everything in the deck, is an X Antibody traded Digimon. So his play cost of 2 makes him a really cheap card to just try to help dig through our deck for our X Antibody traded cards. Then on top of that, when we Digivolve into a Digimon of the same level that is an X Antibody traded card, then we get to suspend this tamer to be able to gain a memory and draw a card. So we're going to be using this effect in combination with DexDorugamon or DexDoruGreymon to be able to gain even more memory and more tempo on top of more resources. And then when it comes to the options of the deck, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Kongou. So Kongou in this deck is absolutely insane at being able to turn off a lot of the opponent's potential aggression, while also adding some potential protection onto us as well. So the fact that utilizing this card to turn off all of the opponent's Digimon with a play cost of 7 or less from even being able to attack a player is really valuable at just being able to shut off low-level aggro, while also adding the extra ability where cards can't be added into the security, so it really turns off the opponent's ability to be able to recover or utilize effects that want to shove our Digimon into our security. Then its security ability activates its main, so it could potentially harm the opponent even from security. And then I'm going to be running 2 copies of Black Memory Boost just for some extra consistency, being a really good digging tool for our Black Digimon, while also setting up its secondary main ability of Delay to gain 2 memory at a later turn to enhance and extend some of our combo plays. And then the last card and last option of the deck is going to be 1 copy of X Antibody. This is still just a pretty decent card, not only as a good security threat to potentially anti-tempo the opponent, but as a way to add cards into our inheritable sources, which a lot of our cards want because they have abilities that'll trigger when we do that, while also having some extra effects when it's in our Digimon's Digivolution source to be able to basically Digivolve mid-attack and to be able to potentially protect our stack by having this card not being able to be removed from our Digivolution source. And then when it comes to the overall game plan and gameplay of the deck, it is just basically you sitting there searching through your deck until you have enough cards in your hand to be able to build that perfect stack and be able to combo off with. So when it comes to the usage of our level 3s, it really doesn't matter which level 3 you have in raising. The best ones are going to be Sunarizamon because it's not an X Antibody traded card, so we don't have ways to shove it underneath, or it's going to be the Dorumon just because of that extra memory gain. The Ryudamon is really good at building our secondary stack because of that Decoy Black to add extra protection, but with the Ryudamon and with the Dorumon, having both on play abilities to try to help with the overall consistency, most of the time I found myself wanting to hard play those, and the most optimal one to use for our stack is going to be the promo Sunarizamon. Then when it comes to the level 4s, it realistically doesn't matter which of the Dorugamons that you're going to be using, just because the inheritable abilities basically just give our Digimon plus 1000 DP, so they're doing almost the exact same thing, and we just care about the name for when we go into our Dex form. So for the sake of the example, I'm just going to be using the old one, just because the new one, we have the potential to hard play to be able to get a level 4 Digimon out for relatively cheap. Then from this type of a position, you're going to want to try to set up your tamers, which is mostly going to be your Cool Boys and your Yujis. So the Kota isn't as important for the deck. He just helps so that way we could start at 3 and still be another consistency tool. But when it comes to the actual combo in terms of going up our chain and making it as efficient as we possibly can, Yuji and Cool Boy are going to be the ones that you're going to want to see and use the most. Just because when from this position we move our Digimon out, if we have Yuji on our field, we'll be able to gain a memory. Then when we Digivolve into our Dex form, we'll be able to discard a card, gain an extra memory due to our Dex's ability, and then gain a memory thanks to our Cool Boy's ability, so that way with our Kota, or at least just starting at 3 memory, for free, we could Digivolve and potentially gain 3 memory, so that way we could Digivolve into either of our DoruGreys. Again, it doesn't necessarily matter as much. Obviously, the DoruGrey from BT7 is going to be the more optimal one, just because that's the card that's actually limited to 1, but that's why we at least have the brand new one to still have the DoruGrey by name, so we could, again, utilize our Dex card to go on top of it. So we're going to then go into a DoruGrey, and then from here, you're going to potentially want to go into our Dex, only realistically if you're trying to delete a Digimon. Otherwise, there's not that much of a reason to use our X unless we're hard playing a Cool Boy and trying to utilize another Cool Boy. So the Dex for our level 5 isn't as important as the other, but when we go into our DoruGrey, we're going to be paying 3, which we just gained the 3, so that way we could then still hold our turn to be able to Digivolve into our level 6s. And then the level 6s we're primarily going to want to Digivolve into is going to be either the BT13 Alphamon or the BT9 Alphamon. They're both pretty good at just trying to add cards from our trash into its inheritable ability, So that way we could use the discards off of our Dex cards to try to put our Ouryumon into our trash, so that way our Alphamons could potentially grab it back when we Digivolve into it. So I'm going to be going into the brand new Alphamon just because he's still really good and he has some really solid protections. So even though he's going to be costing 4, that's fine, because if we used the DoruGrey to potentially add something like a Dorumon underneath, we'll be able to gain that memory to be able to not pass turn. But that's why the old Alphamon is still pretty good, because he just natively costs 3, so that way we have alternative ways to be able to Digivolve all the way up into our level 6 and still not pass our turn. Then from this type of position, we're going to ideally want to have discarded our Ouryumon to shove them underneath, so that way we could use our ginormous stack to be able to start aggressing with and be possibly defensive, just because he's going to stop the opponent from being able to attack with their high level Digimon, which really limits what they're able to do, on top of the fact that he has some built-in protections. So if we don't exactly have our Ouryumon, we could still start thinking about aggressing, utilizing our Ouryumon to be able to unsuspend. Then we would have gained the passive benefits of blocker and retaliation to be able to maintain a really powerful Digimon on the field that the opponent doesn't have a whole lot of answers for. And then when we do find our Alphamon Ouryuken, then we're just going to go into our Alphamon Ouryuken, delete one of the opponent's Digimon, or potentially multiple of the opponent's Digimon, depending on where the current state of their board is, and then we get to use his end of turn ability to be able to start trashing our sources to be able to gain the memory to maintain our turn, and that's kind of where the Yuji starts to become really important, so that way we could try to swing with our Alphamon, use Yuji to shove underneath a new Ouryumon to be able to unsuspend, and then start swinging and repeating that over and over again. So you do need to see a whole lot of parts and pieces and able to make your combo as powerful and effective as you possibly can. But even if you don't have the super optimal combo, you still can just do this type of evolutionary line and play pattern to be able to have a Digimon that's going to be really hard for the opponents to deal with nonetheless, while aggressing and potentially stopping the opponent. Just because if we are just trying to sit and wait on our Alphamon or Ouryuken play, we could use the brand new Alphamon in combination with a card like Kongou, so we could use Kongou to try to pass the turn, stop the opponent from potentially recovering, and then they can't attack with their Digimon that have a play cost of 7 or less, combine that with 10 or more, and the opponent is able to attack only with Digimon with a play cost of 8 or 9, which really limits the amount of Digimon that they're able to aggress with. So you could kind of start to see a lot of the moving parts and pieces to not only just aggress, but to stall out the opponent at the same time, and we do have lots of good combo potential and consistency in the deck to make sure that we could try to find all of our parts and pieces to be able to get into this type of position to then combo off, win the game off the back of our multi-attacking Alphamon or Ouryuken ideally. And then as far as the core or base of the deck, that kind of is just the core or base of the deck in terms of just utilizing the Doru lines and trying to optimize your usage of Cool Boys and Dexes and your Alphamons. But we do have some other cute cards we could think about running, depending on what cards you have available and the expected meta you're going to be playing up against and the cards you want to run. So if you wanted to, just for some extra DP, you could run the BT13 Dorumon. This isn't that great of a card, but the extra DP still could potentially come in handy. Then on top of that, we do have the BT9 Dorumon for some good cycling to try to help with the overall consistency of the deck, and we also have the promo Dorumon to be able to try to help maintain a board state and to try to play some of our mid to low level Digimon for free as a good security threat, which could help set us up really easily. Then when it comes to some alternative level 4 Digimon, we realistically could think about playing the cards in the Ryudamon line, but we don't really need to, and instead we could think about teching in a hybrid with all of the memory we could potentially gain off of our Ouryumon, just to gain an extra attack off of our Kota if you have one on the field, or your unsuspended Yujis to be able to sneak extra damage in. Then continuing with the theme on utilizing the Ryudamon line, we could think about utilizing his Ouryumon for his reboot inheritable, and another way to be able to get up into our higher stage Digimon relatively efficiently. Then we also do have Dorimon just as another cute level 5 if you want to try to utilize his ability, but he's not needed in the deck at all just because what we have already is better than what this card is doing. Then if you wanted to, you could also think about utilizing the BT6 Alphamon just as another Alphamon. He does have his own pros and cons in terms of the memory management and the DP that we could be playing around with, on top of the fact that he does have a security ability to try to turn off the opponent's aggression, which is really, really nice. But unfortunately, the big drawback to this card is he doesn't have ways to be able to add to its inheritable sources himself, so that's the reason why most people don't actually utilize this card, even though he still could potentially be really, really good. Then when it comes to some other options, we do have Waltz End as another really good removal option, and we do have various other black removal options we could think about utilizing as well. Then we also do have some other good utility options, like Breath of the God for some extra protection and potential defense on top of stopping the opponent's aggression, or Final Zubagon Punch to try to help with the overall offensive capabilities of the deck. If you're trying to go for your big Unga Bunga combo, this could help kill the opponent a little bit faster while also helping with your DP management. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.